Welcome to Murder in the Air Mystery Theater. I'm your host, Lori Fagan. In this podcast series, I'll interview authors who will then read their mystery, suspense, or thriller short stories or a chapter from their published books. In addition, sprinkled throughout the coming weeks, the podcast will feature radio theater-style sections from the audiobooks for my 3 crime fiction novels. There will be prizes too, so stick around to the end to find out how to enter. We're pleased to have Charlotte Whitney of Tempe, Arizona, writer of historical mystery books, in studio today. Welcome to Murder in the Air Mystery Theater, Charlotte.
Thanks so much, Lori. Lovely to be here.
Now, you have written a contemporary romance called I Dream in White, as well as 2 period books, Threads, a Depression-era tale, and your latest book, The Unveiling of Polly Forrest, both set in the Depression. What attracted you to write these historical mysteries in that particular time period?
Lori, I grew up on a small family farm and living a lifestyle that wasn't too different from my parents and grandparents who had actually lived during the Depression. So I heard a lot of stories, particularly from my mother and her 2 sisters, my aunts, about what life was like during the Depression. It fascinated me in that there were differences, but also a lot of similarities to the life that I was living. And a common theme when you're writing is to write what you know. That's always what you're told. And I decided to try that.
Obviously, writers work with words, but you went a step further and wrote a book, How to Win at Upwards, which you say is your favorite game. How did that come about?
Well, 2 of my friends introduced me to the game of Upwards, a word game similar to Scrabble, although quite different in that you can build tiles upward with upwards as well as vertically and horizontally. I was disappointed and frankly bothered by the fact that I wasn't doing very well in the game. So I looked for books about upwards, and you can find dozens of books about Scrabble, but nothing was written on upwards. So I mentioned to my friends, I said, let's write a book, How to Win at Upwards. They both thought it was a great idea, but they said, we're not authors. We'll help you edit the book. And that's how that came to be.
That's great fun. So let's talk a little bit about your writing process. How does that work for you, and what is your best time to write?
My best time to write? Well, I'm definitely a morning person. That's when I have the most energy, the most creativity, when I'm not bothered by tackling big projects. So I almost always save mornings for writing. Now, having said that, my 2 favorite yoga classes are both offered Friday and Saturday mornings. So I take those mornings off and then compensate in the afternoons for the time that I've taken off. And frankly, the yoga is so useful in so many ways that it's definitely worthwhile.
So you're writing pretty much 6 or 7 days a week?
Usually 6. I often take Sunday off, but if I've had extra time interruptions during the week, sometimes I'll do a little work on Sunday afternoon to make up for it. It just depends on my schedule from week to week.
Very good. So what is the most surprising thing you've discovered about writing?
Oh, well, Lori, I found out to publish a book and make it successful, it takes a village. When I was young and read Little Women and was fascinated with the character Jo, who became the author, and she would go up into her garret in her attic and write a book. And it was totally solitary. So this was my idea of what writing was like. Just go upstairs, write a book, hand the draft to somebody, and it was published. Well, that is so far from how it works today. So far, as I'm sure you are aware yourself, you need a team of editors. You need a book cover designer. A few people have the artistic and technical skills to do that, but most don't. You need a book formatter who can put the book into various ebook formats, into paperback, hardcover, and then audiobook. That's a totally different animal. And then once the book is published, you need marketing expertise. And a lot of people have marketing expertise, but and I have a little bit, but not a whole lot. So you need those people too. And it does come at a cost. This was another surprise for me. I thought that it would be just easy to write a book, and you can put it up on Amazon for free. But it wouldn't be a very good book, at least my books, because I tend to read over mistakes, and then it would just sit there on the bookshelves or in Amazon warehouses and never be sold if you don't market it. So that was the biggest surprise. You really need lots and lots of people involved in your book. And you don't have to pay for everything. I have a huge team of beta readers, if you want to call it, or advanced reviewers who are just in my circle of friends who love to read my books and will do that and do some editing and critiquing for the privilege of being the first to read the book. So it's not everything is monetary, but a significant portion is.
And thank goodness for those beta readers, right?
Yes, absolutely.
We do like them a lot, absolutely. So what are you working on next?
My next book, the working title is The Showers of Perseus, referring to the Perseid showers, those beautiful comet showers that you see in the night sky in mid-August in the Northern Hemisphere. We have, as the main characters, a cantankerous, ornery old man married over 30 years to his overly generous wife who would give away the store or the farm, as the case may be. And a 13-year-old naive girl who comes into their lives, and there are a lot of forces at work. There's a fire, people losing their homes. There's a child trafficking network in the background. Lots of tension, lots of suspense as the story unfolds.
Very interesting. We'll be looking forward to that. Okay, you are going to read a bit from The Unveiling of Polly Forrest. Give us a little setup and then go ahead and read from your book.
The section I'm going to read is from a chapter in the later part of the book. It's leading up to the climax where we find out who done it and why. And in this scene, Polly, who is the main character, she is narrating, and she has just been assaulted by her husband, who she thought was dead, and her arm is bleeding. He has cut her arm through the sleeve of her dress, and she is actually very worried for her life. So this from the words of Polly. I checked my arm and saw that the wound wasn't deep, but I grabbed another towel and wrapped it again. It was my right arm. I wondered if in his anger, he'd purposely chosen my dominant side. Sam said nothing, but contorted his face, the way he always did when angry. Fix me supper. I'm starved. I thought a moment before responding to his request. We've got some ground meat in the icebox, and I can pick some ripe tomatoes and sweet corn from the garden. Sounds okay. I turned to the cutlery rack and picked up a large knife, but he immediately grabbed it. No knife. My heart sank. Even though I was clearly no match against him, even after his pronounced weight loss last autumn, Sam was still a big man at 6 feet. He pushed me out the door to the garden, totally out of view from Sarah and Wesley's house. He grabbed a basket from the back room for the vegetables, and I picked 6 ears of sweet corn, pulling them off with my hands, trying to keep my right arm elevated. Then I plucked 3 tomatoes off the vine with my left hand. I stood at the end of the garden, husking the corn, wishing someone would come up the driveway, turn, and follow it to the garden where they could see us. No such luck. I don't remember that dress, Sam said. What do you call that purple color? Is it light purple? Lavender, I responded. I didn't want to tell him it was new. It's a summer dress. You may not remember it. I looked at the new towel around my arm and saw some blood had appeared. I like it, he said. The compliment didn't sit well with me, so I didn't respond. The dress was clearly ruined with the slashed sleeves and bloodstains. As we walked back in the house, I threw my sunbonnet on a hook in the back room, and the phone started ringing. Don't answer it. But what if it's Sarah calling to borrow sugar or butter? Okay, but get off fast. Hello? It was Zeb. Sam must have heard his voice because he grabbed me from behind with a knife at my back. I started trembling. What's this about supper? Zeb asked. I could feel the knife pressing into my back through my dress and camisole. I need some time alone, that's all. I was trying to keep my voice steady. Okay, and get some rest. Goodbye. Perhaps this would be my last conversation with Zeb ever. Once Sam finished eating, he'd be figuring out how to get rid of me. Literally. He might already have given up on the money in the Lansing banks, since he'd have the $50,000 for the engraved plates. Having that much already, another $1,000 might not even matter to him. Still, he hung on to the savings account books. After lighting the cook stove, I fried the meat and boiled the sweet corn. All the while, my mind was racing. How could I escape? Running to the outhouse wouldn't get me anywhere, nor would trying to run to Sarah's. No matter how hard I tried to figure out a plan, nothing came to mind. Flattery, I kept telling myself. The fact that I told him he was clever seemed to have loosened him up. I needed to keep doing that until I devised a scheme to get away. I brought the meat, sweet corn, and tomatoes to the table and set a plate and silverware at his regular place. Aren't you going to eat? No, I don't like my cooking. I've always been afraid I'd poison myself. To my surprise, he laughed. After setting his plate in front of him, I remained standing. I edged over to the counter and the knife rack. Sit here at your place, he ordered me, for old time's sake. I walked over and sat, trying to put on my prettiest smile. I found the letters to your mother in my desk. What an imagination you have. Which bedrooms we'd use for our children. Where to have a swimming hole, a rope swing, an ice skating pond. I was the kindest and most generous husband ever. I thought for a moment I was gonna vomit. and grabbed my handkerchief and pretended to be blowing my nose while I swallowed to keep my stomach in check. Panicking, I realized I needed to respond to him, to keep him engaged in conversation. Sucking in a big breath, I started speaking. I don't understand how you did the counterfeiting money thing. You made the drawings first and then engraved some metal plates? I'd never be smart enough to do that. Yes, that's the key to making money. He laughed at his own joke. I labored over the details in the engravings. They're worth a fortune. All you gotta do is bleach out some $1 to print up 10s, 20s, and 50s. Voila! He snapped his fingers. But these days, dollars are golden. People are scared to take the higher currency. Dollars are the road to riches. I wondered if he knew the Bensons had been arrested this afternoon. I decided to say nothing. But where did you hide them? Those two brothers looked everywhere. I decided not to mention the real White House police were here too. He might not have been aware of that. Sam sat back in his chair and grinned at me. It was that self-satisfied grin that I hated. You'd never guess. What's the one building on the farm you've never been in? I had no trouble feigning a puzzled face. I actually was in the corn crib last fall before corn picking. But that building has slats. No, he answered. You might be able to bury the plates in the middle of the corn, but you'd scratch them up and you'd have a hard time getting them out. You'd have to unload at least half the corn. Bad choice. He picked up another ear of sweet corn and buttered it. It dawned on me that he was referring to the silo, which I'd never really considered a building, but more as an appendage to the barn. I'd deliberately stayed away from the silo because of the poisonous gas from the silage and my fear of heights. Even looking at the exterior ladder gave me goosebumps. While Sam ate his sweet corn, I contemplated the silo. The engraved metal plates must be in there. I knew that it was now less than a third full of fermented alfalfa. Wes had been feeding it to the cows and pigs before I sold them, and he'd been hauling it over to his barn to feed his own cattle. I wondered why Wes hadn't seen the engraved plates when he was working in there. The only place Sam could have hidden them was high on the interior wall near the upper window opening, as the silage was up to 50 feet when he died. Did you figure it out yet? Sam asked me, pushing away his plate. No, I can't say that I have, I lied. You want to see? I didn't know how to respond. Was this a setup to hurt me again? Maybe, I answered. I'm not anxious to go near Ginger's pen. Why not go see Ginger? You always liked that spirited gal. She died. Died? I nodded. He grimaced and moved around in his chair. Obviously, he wasn't happy to hear about Ginger. You gave me money for Ginger, a wedding gift. I loved that horse. I'd moved her to Black Devil's old pen a few weeks ago. More room for her in her tack. It was easier to get her saddled up in there. He looked surprised. I guess he hadn't been hanging out in the barn much. I wanted to ask him about how he got the printing press into Black Devil's pen, but I was afraid to let him know it was no longer there. Now that Sam's stomach was full, I didn't have much stalling time. I looked towards the window. Then, to my surprise, I heard Sam groaning. He bent over, pushing his hand into his belly. "You poisoned me, you bitch, and then you joked about it. That's why you didn't eat." I held my breath. I couldn't afford for Sam to suspect me of any wrongdoing. "Sam, no. How could I poison corn and tomatoes that you saw me bring in fresh from the garden? And you saw me take the meat straight from the icebox to the frying pan. Besides, even if I had poison, which I don't, you'd taste it." Trying to remain calm, I stood my ground. "They put foul-tasting stuff in rat poison so people won't eat it, especially children." I was fabricating this detail. But so what? It might be true. My stomach's been acting up a lot these days. "Your family curse?" He immediately turned his head and stared at me. "You know about the Forrest family curse?" "You mentioned it when we were courting. One night after a movie at the Bijou Theater, you were bent over in pain, and you said you were worried about the family curse." I'd forgotten about that. Your pretty face cured me of the symptoms for a while, but not long enough. "Have you seen a doctor?" He shook his head. "It's the Forrest cancer, and there's no cure." He was shifting the knife from hand to hand, a nervous symptom I'd noticed in church when he'd pass the hymnal back and forth. Sam was probably right. Cancer usually is a death sentence. There, it subsided. He grinned again, and I saw that one of his back teeth was missing. "You're going to collect the engraved plates and leave?" I was hoping for a reprieve. "Once it gets dark, I'll take them to my car. I was counting on Ginger to get me over there. Guess I'll take Jasper." "He's up at Wes and Sarah's. Bessie died, and they're getting a new horse next week." I wasn't going to tell him that I'd given Jasper to them. Sam was never keen on Wes or Sarah, either one. "Looks like I'll have to walk." My mind was racing. How could I get him to tell me where he'd hidden his car? Could he have left it at the church with the Benson's roadster? I figured it was most likely at the Dolliver place. "I could help you carry them into your car. Is it far?" He turned and looked at me. "You're one stupid bitch. The Dolliver farm." I'd already guessed it correctly. That farm backed up to Sam's, the boundary being a wire fence and a wooded field. I'd ridden Ginger down that path along the creek more than a dozen times to the Dolliver property line. It was a perfect place for Sam to hide out, so he didn't have to drive down the road. He simply could walk from the back lane up to our barn without ever being seen. Also, the fact that it was a polio house kept locals from snooping around. Sam stepped up close to me, waving the knife. "We're going to get those engraved plates now." But suddenly, he put his left hand on his stomach and winced again. In a weird way, I felt sorry for him. It made no sense for me to feel this way. Sam would probably end up killing me tonight. Perhaps my empathy was a carryback from our early courting days when I believed he really cared for me. Okay, we need to get those plates pronto. Lead the way. I wondered if he could sense my false bravado. Sam walked out, not towards the silo, but to the old granary. Once inside the granary, he picked up a crowbar, and we headed over to the silo. I remained silent. I wondered if he knew that the silage level was down more than 2/3 since his death. Maybe he had already checked it out, but perhaps not. When Sam headed not into the milk house that led to the barn entrance, but to the exterior ladder running up the outside of the silo, I had my answer. He expected the silage level to be near the top. It looked like he planned to use the crowbar to push open the hinged board covering the window at the top. I figured out my plan. Once he got the window open, I would push him down to the warm, soft silage below and have enough time to run to Wes and Sarah's house to call the sheriff. Perhaps he'd try exiting the silo door to the barn rather than immediately heading back up to the window. Then he would find that it was nailed tight from the outside, which would give me even more time. Climb up, Sam ordered. Hurry up or I'll whack your ribs with this crowbar. My plan to push him into the silo wasn't going to work. Hurry up. Okay. Having no choice, I started up the long, tall ladder. I got up 5 or 6 rungs before my fear of heights kicked in. My body started shaking, and I willed myself not to look down. I kept putting one foot above the other. The towel around my right arm had loosened. I let it fall to the ground, not wanting to let go with my other arm. Every move required my mind telling my arms and legs to move. I was shaking so hard my hands could hardly grip the ladder. You can do this, I told myself. You can. Keep going. His voice was piercing. I willed my feet to move up the ladder. My body convulsed. I was about 5 rungs from the top when I stopped. Reason told me I needed to quit shaking and get my body under control, or I would fall. Then it occurred to me. He's not going to push me into the soft silage. He's going to knock me off the top of the ladder down to the hard earth. I would be meeting the same horrific fate as Johanna. And that's the end of the passage that I've chosen here. It then leads into the real climax of the book, where we get other people involved. And I don't want to give away the story here, so I won't say too much, but the murderer is revealed.
That was a great section to read. Thank you so much. And that was Charlotte Whitney reading from The Unveiling of Polly Forrest, a historical mystery. You can find Charlotte on Facebook at C. Whitney Author, as well as on Instagram and Twitter. And she's a regular on TikTok as well. Visit her website for more information at charlottewhitney.com. And the info is in the show notes. Thanks so much for being with us today.
And thank you for having me, Lori.
Don't miss episode number 12, when you'll hear more from L.N. Payne, P.I., from my Dead Air audiobook. And then author Dennis Palumbo will be along on episode number 13 to talk about his Daniel Rinaldi mystery thrillers. If you are listening on the podcast platform of your choice, please subscribe and leave a review or provide us with some feedback. If you're on YouTube at Read Lori Fagan, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and click on the bell to be notified when a new episode has been released. And for more freebies, check out our Patreon page at Murder in the Air Mystery Theater. Remember I mentioned prizes? At the end of each of these Murder in the Air podcasts, we'll have a drawing for a prize from those who follow Read Lori Fagan on Facebook or Instagram, and in the comment, write murder to be entered in a drawing. We'll have drawings for free ebooks, chances to win your name in a novel, and other fun items. So go to Facebook or Instagram, follow Read Lori Fagan, and write murder in the comment. For more information, you can visit readlorifagan.com. Thanks so much for listening, and come back again for more Murder in the Air.